It was the last day of the Playins round robins. It was the last day of the playing round robins. It was the last day of the playing round. I've got a lot of emotions about today. A lot of emotions about today. But well, let's get to some things first. Hi. My name is Sam. This is Vision Denial, and specifically our daily sweepers. Now, you'll probably be seeing two videos up today. A little bit later, I'll be doing one with just Connor. Josh couldn't come today. He has some scheduling conflicts. But hopefully, we'll be able to get him in a different Vision Denial podcast. So what is the Daily Sweepers? It's me doing some dramatic readings of my notes here about all of the games that I've played so far during Worlds, when Worlds happens. I'll be getting one every day that Worlds is playing. And today is the third day. I do want to mention that down over here, there's going to be a bunch of highlight videos that come around. Those are they're from the VCS channel. Do take the time to go check out their channel. They make great content. The VCS is a fantastic league that hasn't had the chance to participate in an international event for a while. And it makes it really easy for me to do these, put little highlights there. Other piece of interesting facts. I'm going to get a little heated, mostly because I care. I like professional League of Legends. Yeah, cool. Let me know your thoughts down below after you've seen the video, how you thought Playins went out so far. Who do you think is going to make it towards the, through the best of fives? And with that, without further ado, let's get started with the first game of the day. LNG versus Infinity. It's been a while since we've had a Dancing Herald. Now, I know this is unfortunate for Infinity, who managed to pull a nice draft with some solid options. They approached neutral objectives early on fairly well and had solid map movements early game. They just couldn't properly react to the non-stop and relentless pressure that LNG provided. And by the time that they were trying to make any counterplays or trying to be proactive in any sense, the gold lead had become so large that they depended on misplays from LNG, which were very few. You gotta appreciate the fact that they decided to not mess around and secure the win. This is the least limit testing like game that I've seen out of them so far. Granted, it's only been 4 games, and I'm glad that the 4th game, just as they qualified for the group stages, that they stop it. Now, I'm just going to come here and say that they played it perfectly, right? They played the comp as is perfectly from start to finish. Icon is still questionable with some of those rune choices, coupled with some brazen engages that look good on screen, but if the gold were even, would not work out. But they had stellar early warding. But the mid game here, right, showed that no matter what, incredible coverage from warding that match with their gold lead would indicate. That sentence is not great, so I'm going to try to reward it. It showed that their early game warding was great and that their mid game warding was even better, and that should have tracked with their gold lead. And that's an unfortunate scenario for some of the teams that are lower seeded but are clear favorites in the play-ins, that sometimes they'll lack proper ward coverage because they can get away with it. UL last year specifically would fall into this trapping a lot. Now, games like these are hard to gauge how well and or slash poorly a team will do when they move on to the next stage of the tourney. Lack of competition, especially when play isn't optimal or clean, skews what our expectations should be for this team going into groups, especially since they've been slotted into Group D, one who have arguably the closest and harder to read possible results. A lot of the people would be automatically on Mad, and I would partially agree, but given how close these margins are, how uncertain Gen G is, and Team Liquid's inconsistent slash wild variety in terms of results, LNG being swung in here, having very similar backgrounds, makes it hard to tell how they're going to do. Now, hopefully they can take their playing experience as a chance to get a picture of what the meta is and what their limits may be, considering they used a lot of games to do limit testing, because the other teams won't let them get away with it as much. LNG wins and are 4-0, the only lossless team in Playins. And they auto-qualify for groups in Group D as the 4th Chinese seed there. Infinity, unfortunately, are 0-4 and are eliminated from Worlds. Next on the docket, Peace versus Red Canids Kalunga. Now, with the first game of the day, we knew that this group was not going to have any tiebreakers. But, preview of a best of 5 to come, huh? So, this preview would be interesting if we're going to call it a preview. To Red, I'm a little confused as to where your early game prowess went all of a sudden. Peace managed to outmaneuver and outlane you during the first 10 minutes. Now, this wasn't from being passive, but from being active with inadequate setup and vision. It was like Peace managed to garner many of their leads from punishing, mispositioning, poor fight choices, weak vision, things that should be standard play from a team that had higher expectations, right? Red, you showed us in games one, or in your like first couple of games, where it was really unfortunate that you would have lost to both Homolife and LNG, but had shown your prowess against them, especially in the first 10 minutes where you looked like a fairly competitive team with just slight lack of experience. You showed complete lack of experience against a team that you were garnered as the favorites to come in. Now, the takeaway that they should have is to keep up this type of proactive play, and keep up the proactive plays trying to come back, as well as like any play that would get them first to the anywhere, because their neutral setups are pretty great. Your macro reads are great. They do them properly, but they're just not set up optimally. Improve a couple of these things. Improve your vision game and take your time with this. Always take your time. And they will do you a world of good come the best of 5 against Peace. Now, I've kind of sidelined Peace for a little bit, mostly because this is a lot better than I expected them to do. This is an incredible show of talent and awareness from them. They've had a fantastic use of both vision denial and control, something that was not common in their playoffs. It's really good to see this pivot, solid engages and approach to the fights, and they did really well to close out the game. That said, their neutral setups do need work, given especially the leads that they had accrued. And they should be able to have wave management done in a way so that Red can't respond to any of the global pressures you put, again, especially with the leads that you had. Garnering like a big weakness, especially since either of these teams are going to have to face Cloud9, who excel in a lot of the aspects that both of these teams can't. They have to shore it up. Their lack of vision on both ends is not going to work. Peace may have done it better this time around for this game, but I don't know how consistent they'll be with it. And Red needs to pick it back up. Both of these teams have separate parts that they've excelled at and shown a good propensity for, but like, it is unfortunate that the times where we see Peace do better is when you see their opponents do worse. And I don't like seeing that, because it doesn't indicate to me that Peace... It's hard to tell how much Peace has improved. They've improved, mind you. And it's fun to see this, because I did mark them as like second to last, right above UOL in terms of teams coming into Worlds. And playing like this shows that they are here to improve and to show people up, and that most are wrong. So, if either of these teams fix up these kinks, they'll do well in the best of fives. And that's kind of what I mostly care about. I'm going to be personally rooting for Red Canids because I like their story. But if either of these teams play well during the best of fives, and then they end up having to face Cloud9, and I have very little doubts about how well they'll do, perfect. That's all I care about at that point. With that, Peace wins and are 2-2, getting side selection for Game 1 of the best of 5 versus Red, who are now 1-3. They'll be playing each other tomorrow. And that's how Group A concluded. We then get to Group B. Cool. Whereas, the first couple of games are boring. These next couple of games really ramp up. We next go for Detonation Focus Me versus Beyond Gaming. My, oh my, what a statement to make. Securing minimum second place. Right? To start, Beyond Gaming are still struggling to find some sort of foothold in this meta. And in this tourney. It's not looking great for them. Now, they have passable vision and a clear understanding of what their win conditions are, but are always slow to react when Detonation and Focus Me are applying any global pressure or have TP advantage. And there's something to be said about their approach to these best of ones and lack of preparation or adaptability. It's bizarre to see that they aren't playing around Doggo as much as they can as much as they can, and are using him as a possible backup more than anything else. So, Beyond Gaming still have hope. They are likely to do a tiebreaker, which means they'll be able to play a best of 5, which they excel at much more than best of ones. They aren't likely to do a tiebreaker. After this game, they clearly did, but at the time when I wrote this, I wrote down that they aren't likely to do a tiebreaker, which means they'll be able to play a best of 5, which they excel much more at than best of ones. Now, Detonation Focus Me had immaculate play this game. Solid vision control and denial. Global pressure across the board, something they've excelled at since the start of the tourney. Great wave manipulation. And there's some concerns about their lackadaisical approach to neutral objectives, not having priority towards them when you have such strong leads and are already setting up for them feels counter to what should be the approach. There's also some concern about the way this team slows down during the mid game, stalling and allowing for some comebacks to be possible. And it becomes super clear that any team that ups their pressure during the mid game or understands that their spikes are usually during the mid game and are able to really play into that win condition will seriously be able to take advantage of how Detonation Focus Me approach the game. Now, they should be focusing on honing in their leads to close out games in more efficient manners and to grab foothold of neutral objectives more often. They fix those two things. A lot of the ways that they play the game and prepare are going to really like soar so much. Like this team is fantastic. They feel very much like like every year there's a region that starts becoming like up and comers that are regulars. I feel like this is the first time that I can see an emerging region contest the spot for Vietnam. I know we haven't seen them in an international play for 2 years, but their local play is usually fairly intense. And this is the first time that I've seen a team that could really do that in any propensity. So, as when I wrote this, they have a small chance of facing C9 again for a first place tiebreaker, as unlikely as it may be. So, what is bound to happen is that they'll face the winner of Red versus Peace in a best of 5 of groups. And given what we've seen, they should be able to pull it off. Clean off some of their problem areas, and you're bound for groups easily. Detonation Focus Me wins Arnar 3-1, securing a second place and a bye for Playins best of 5. Beyond Gaming are 1-4 with a small chance of a tiebreaker for elimination. Oh. Now we have Cloud9 versus UOL. Holy smokes, guys. They did it. The Unicorns did it. Now, honestly, no one could expect this to happen. UOL's draft was nothing great by any means. It's kind of wacky more than anything else. It also feels a little old. It feels more like stuff that they used to play in the metas that happened during their playoffs. And it shouldn't have performed well unless early leads have been accrued. It's a good thing that C9 are stubborn and keep throwing themselves against the wall over and over and over. And what the fuck are you doing, Cloud9? Now, this isn't as if Cloud9 weren't trying to play standard. They have solid map movement, good neutral setups, decent vision at occasions. But guys, like, you keep fighting in optimal, like, keep opting into bad fights over and over again, right? Like, what are you to expect every time when you have your team in, like, a hold pattern or somebody off completely somewhere else, and you've shown that you have no idea how to properly utilize your teleports in any way to do any flanking or any new map movements? You do great map movements just walking from one place to the other. You do wave manipulations in ways that are good. You have ways to pressure things, but then you don't use teleports in any ways. You have like random spatterings and separations of groups where one will engage and then the others are just kind of like scrambling to get by. And like they work out every so often if you got like big pockets of gold ready to go from early leads because you didn't fight early because you did all the setup properly. But no, right? So did UOL capitalize on this situation? They did. They properly capitalized on the situation with solid wave manipulation and neutral approaches also. Like, the second a team can match and start contesting against Cloud9 in this way, it makes it really easy to beat them. So this was honestly more Cloud9's blunders than UOL's. So, like, UOL did play this well and deserve the win. By no amounts do I want to be like, oh, Cloud9 gave them the win. No. UOL took an opportunity and actually moved it forward. That said, UOL still needs to shore up the ways that they do their drafting and make sure that they are in coordination with how they approach the win conditions, because oftentimes they seem to be playing autopilot. Now, C9, you need to focus on your own coordination also and avoiding any attempts of your hero plays. Your individual players don't all need to be carries, especially when you already work so hard to set up coordinated plays. These disjointed fights really hurt this game and could cost you your buy into groups. Foreshadow. especially if it happens against Detonation Focus Me, who are way more coordinated in team fights, just by definition. With that, UOL wins and are now 1-3 and can now face a tiebreaker against Beyond Gaming for the last best of 5 slot. And C9 are 3-1 and now have to face Detonation Focus Me for a tiebreaker for first and a buy into groups. And this is where we get into tiebreaker territory. Now, the fact that this game had a chance to be another upset is incredible. Beyond Gaming finally drafted around Doggo, and my goodness, does it show. This was the Doggo and Leong show. I think these drafts recently are not quite there as far as the meta goes, but do they ever lend to the kinds of fights Beyond Gaming excel at? Misdirection and peel for the carry. Make sure that Doggo is hard to approach and has ways of being able to go in at his own pace. Always making sure that it's hard for any reaction to come from their opponent. Now, I think that their vision play is what's hurting them the most outside of drafting win conditions that are not their style. Many of the plays that had UOL come back into the game were off poor vision Beyond Gaming could have easily fixed had they taken the time to properly set up. Set up their neutrals or even covering any flanks that might catch them off guard. Despite that, okay, this is the most coordinated I've seen them be in a while. And it's good to see this as they enter the best of 5 stage. And we'll have to face Galatasaray, who are not as good at best of 5 series, given what we've seen from the TCL. Now, sadly, this is the last game from the Unicorns, all right? They don't have the worst score going in. By all means, that's good. I don't think they were the best. I don't think they were that demonstrates that to me. I'm convinced they're not the worst team going in. But they have had a good showing. Sadly, other than their face-off against Cloud9 and some of the face-off that they had with this game, most of their plays were subpar at best and not a very positive reflection of the region. I think I've mentioned it previously that I was certain that this is the weakest team to come into Worlds, and even after their much better showing for these last 2 games, I'm not convinced otherwise. They are definitely the worst team that came in. With that, Beyond Gaming wins and are 2-3 qualify for a best of 5 and will face off Galatasaray tomorrow. In UOL, are 1-4 and are eliminated from Worlds. And then the last game of the day is our first place tiebreaker of Detonation Focus Me versus Cloud9. My God, the number of times these teams have met up in play-ins beforehand and Detonation Focus Me barely make it out, only for this time. Yo, the hype is real. The hype is real. Now, I feel a little vindicated here, okay? I said this was the best team of this group. Okay? Anyways. Much what plagues Cloud9 continues to do so, okay? Your disjointed hero plays that doesn't match your setups that you thoroughly apply. God, what is the point of doing all this setup for vision, for your wave manipulation and neutral objectives if you're just going to, randomly engage and throw yourselves to the wind? Fuck. You do these poor engages and these terrible opt-ins of fights, and you lose your momentum so hard. You also didn't even have control of the pace this game. Not any entirety. Okay. do note again, Cloud9 are fantastic at neutral objectives. They still have managed to hold neutral objectives and wave manipulations super well, and it kept you in the game. And you could have honestly won based off of that. You took Dragon Soul, and I was convinced 100% that they were going to win this game from that. Literally from that. And then they run up 2 minutes later and then lose like 3 fights in a row with no objectives to contest, or no good objectives to contest. You don't want to be you have the ability to poke them out with your goddamn Dragon Soul. You had come on, you had Fire Drake. What are you doing? But so when you're faced with a team that matches your map movements or even excels at it, because that's what they do, and they have stronger coordination during team fights and skirmishes, you falter really quickly. You're usually scrambling around trying to just get what you want. You'll be facing the winner of Peace versus Red. And on paper, guys, you should win that matchup, fairly handily. If and only if you fix up your whack team fight coordination. Okay, guys, detonation, focus me. Look at me. You did it. Yes. This is the first LJL team in groups since its creation. Beautiful. Okay, dream over. You'll be facing significantly tougher opponents, except if you get slotted in Group A, then you'll be facing Rogue, in which case you'll have to just adapt to the Damwon, which you've already had pretty good experience with, and then FPX. I think that group is probably the one you want to be in. But the other two groups that are left will take advantage of you and your subpar vision. They'll also take advantage of your weaker approaches to neutral objectives. Almost every other team going into groups have great map movement and stellar team fighting. And so your difference maker here is your approach to vision and neutral objectives. Now, you do manage to pull off your wins despite your weaknesses, and if you fix up your weaknesses for this, you'll do great in groups, honestly. I don't expect you to win. I don't expect good things. I do expect one win, probably, at the very least minimum. But if you pivot properly going in, you should do great. With that, Detonation Focus Me wins and are 4-1 and qualify for groups. Which group is to be determined based off of the best of 5 section. And Cloud9 are 3-2 and will have to face off the winner of Peace versus Red Canids Kalunga. What are my thoughts? Well, I still think that teams aren't entirely certain how to draft yet. And not because they're necessarily not drafting properly for win conditions or anything. Some teams are, but I think nobody is certain what are the go-tos, what are the proper matchups for things, or any ways that make a solid composition, or what the actual moment to moment is for the plays. Because it used to be a much more clear aspect, but given that there's 2 separate types of junglers that are being picked and they don't seem cohesive in the slightest, there are uncertainties about the kinds of supports that you want to prioritize. No ADC is a top of the ladder priority, and the 2 solo laners still have a giant pool of things. It's all up in the air so far. And so hopefully seeing this best of 5s go in, the actual best of 5s have their own little meta, and that may translate and bleed a little bit into groups, and we might see something really interesting. Now, I'm pretty sure we're going to put predictions at some point during our podcast. But to give perspective, uh, when it comes in, I do think that the games will be closer than expected. I have the impression that Galactusari are probably going to win, and I have a feeling that Red are going to win. And then, like, after that, Life and Cloud9 should win theirs. Operative word, should. Should. But the uncertainty that I have with most of these teams does not lend to great confidence. I also want to say that it is unfortunate to see teams go, but teams do have to go. And Infinity and UL have, I won't say put up great fights, but they did show at least some flavor and style. It's usually unfortunate when teams tend to be non-competitive but also show no style to them, and I think they showed a little bit of style. I also hope that the teams so far bring up some better quality games, and not just because I think that there's like a lack to their strategy, but I also think it's because it's just not as entertaining, guys. Come on. Fighting all the time isn't always going to be like the best watch. Sometimes you want to get creative with some strategy. Pick something interesting. Don't get Don't get like so wild that it makes no sense. But what's your weird pocket pick? Do something. I'm just hoping that like the best of fives allow the opportunity for crowns for like viewers and for the teams to embolden and feel more comfortable with the tourney, because it looks like a lot of the teams still have some sort of jitters going into them. The only teams that I think don't have any jitters or like super comfortable is Detonation, Focus Me, LNG, and that's it. That's pretty much it. And we haven't seen the other 12 teams play because they haven't had the chance yet. And out of the other 8 here, they still seem kind of hesitant with a lot of what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. You let me know in the comments down below. How mad are you at Cloud9, who almost went undefeated up until the last moment against the objectively worst team? They're not objectively worse, but to me, what is like the worst team going in? It's not a great move. And let me know what you think who are going to win. We'll be seeing you later in the evening with our podcast. And with that, I hope you all have a great day. And I'll see you all tomorrow also for the best of fives. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and I'll see you then.